I hear the voices of preacher from the back room, calling my name and I follow just to find you. I trace the faith to a broken down television and put on the weather. And I've trained myself to give up on the past, cause I've frozen time between hearses and caskets. Lost control when I panicked at the acid test. I wanna get better.
Hello and welcome to Muscatine Viewpoint. I'm your host, Chad Bishop. I was just finishing up some Arby's here. Let me get that out of the way. Welcome to the show. We've got a great one for you. We have Santos from the Muscatine City Council here. He's not running for re-election. He's just an at-large candidate. So we're going to talk about all things Muscatine related, a little bit about his background and his history. And very glad he could fill in last minute for our originally scheduled guest. But before we get to that, I've got my opening rant. This one is a river rant, namely enough. So what I wanted to talk about, this weekend I went out to the beach in Muscatine, and there I am, I'm kayaking. Now this beach formed out of nowhere next to Lock and Dam. There's a beautiful shot of the river there. Wow, this beach is immaculate. And every time I ride my bike on the trail, I see it and wonder why nobody's out there using it. So I went out there on Sunday, and kind of my rant is I have literally that entire river to myself. And it was nice out. It was like 78, 85 degrees out. And one thing that I hope that we can do in Muscatine coming forward, and the community development people in Muscatine are working towards this, is get more people to utilize our river, not just our riverfront, but our river. Fill up those river slots. Look at that view. I mean, that was like basically a meditation chair right there. And there I placed my little trophy from the Taming the Slough event that I won, just to mark my territory, because as you'll see, since I don't think this beach has a name yet, I named it Bishop's Beach for now. And as you can see, that it's probably washed away by now, but if it's still there, then that's the official name. But here's the deal, the Muscatine Community Development did a survey and had a proposal that involves well, one more slide here before I start to get serious. A couple movies that I thought of. You had The Blue Lagoon. Kind of turned out to be more of a Wilson-type Tom Hanks thing there, since I was all alone. And it felt like some people were saying, one of us chant there. There's some Lord of the Flies. So a lot of different options for that beach. But look how huge that is. You could have all sorts of fun recreation there for Muscatine residents to utilize. And it's all free natural resource for Muscatine. But what's in the works then is a floatable dock and a beverage garden, maybe a volleyball area on the riverfront. Just different things that will get people to utilize our river in general. And if we can get a beverage garden down there, a restaurant of sorts, on our riverfront, in our pool, we will see the number of boaters double or triple like they do in the other pools. So that's kind of what I've got to say there. And so I hope that people will be supportive of those efforts. And this Arby's is kind of an inside joke. There's a couple of community chat lines, and one of my friends was started a thread regarding Arby's. Now, a lot of these Facebook pages are kind of hateful and negative, quite frankly, the local ones. And so I thought it was kind of interesting that anytime anybody posted something, he would just post a funny clip about Arby's. Something about, I bet that person would enjoy some curly fries right now. And it was a satire, in my opinion, because there's a lot of negativity in these local pages. Relevant to today, I believe there's a Facebook page called Remove the City Council. I mean, that's a hateful name. Maybe we could change it up a little bit. Being negative doesn't usually work when you're trying to make positive change. Maybe moving Muscatine forward. That's a creative, clever name I just thought of just now. Take back Muscatine. That's kind of a slant. Move Muscatine forward. Anyway, I think Arby's is the answer to a lot of our problems in Muscatine in general. So if we start to get ridiculous and go down that negative slide of people kind of venting their frustrations and spreading misinformation, just sit back and enjoy an opportunity to make Muscatine a better place through positive reinforcement and personal action and accountability. All right, now, finally, welcome Santos to the show. I'm so glad you could come and talk to us today.
Thank you.
And fill in last minute.
Thank you for having me.
So, wow, we have, I can't even believe this is happening. We have a city council member right here in our midst, and I would like to ask you all sorts of questions about yourself, about your thoughts on being a council member, and on the upcoming elections, etc. But let's start off.
And I want to talk a lot about that.
Oh,
so
good.
This is going to be a good one.
But before we get too far in there, let's let people know a little bit about you. Your background in Muscatine, where you work, etc. Just give us kind of,
Okay. So I started working at, Joe, I can look over there. I started working out at Monsanto 20 years ago, like I mentioned, with your father or stepdad. And I've been there for 20 years. I started sweeping floors, moved my way through getting my education, getting promotions, and now I work in project engineering, overseeing projects. I am the smallest of 8 kids. My parents have lived here and worked here for 43 years. And my dad retired from Band Egg, my mom retired from Heinz, and this is my life. This is my home.
Wow.
I've always lived here. I've grown up, and this is where I've raised my children. I have 2 beautiful children, 19 and 18, or 20 and 18. They just had birthdays.
Those are interesting names.
And their ages.
Oh, okay.
Anissa and Christian are my children.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So they're kind of through high school. Then they went through the school system.
Yes, and they are just starting college now. My son's been going here to MCC, and my daughter just graduated this last semester.
Great.
So,
tell us a little bit about the boxing club that you're involved with, how you got started, and how that's helping our community as we speak.
So, it's been over 5 years ago. I started a youth gym in my basement, and slowly we started with 2 kids and grew into my garage. And then from my garage, we moved into a South End location across over by Taco John's. And we normally have about 20 to 30 kids, depending on what days they have Awanas or different programs that they're going through. It's basically at-risk kids. We're funded through Muscatine Charities, United Way, Community Foundation, and we're a 501c3, and we work with primarily at-risk kids, but there are a lot of local kids there that come in that are not. And we've had a great success. We have we're open 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, and we travel on Tuesdays. So we continuously try to do activities. It's not about just boxing. It's really just about getting kids to do something productive, and getting them off the streets is our biggest drive. It's not. I mean, we most of those kids, probably 70% plus of them, will never compete. It's just about trying to do something that helps them stay productive and active.
Sense. And that seems like it's worked in other communities as well. Kind of, I mean, at some point you're teaching them to box, which you could see could be
it's a self-defense.
Misconstrued.
Yeah, it can be. It sounds like a brutal sport, but in reality, it's not about that.
Right.
It's about just keeping them active. And we just bought a rowing machine and some more spin bikes, and those kids may hit a bag to get a little bit of anger and frustration out. I just had the West Middle School principal out there, because we have about, I'm going to say, at least a dozen middle school kids, and she came out and was just amazed to see how many of the kids were doing different activities, and the students were really surprised, because she had promised them that she was going to come, and she did.
Nice.
And so it was kind of a good time for her. She was really amazed to see those kids doing what they were doing.
In that foundation of training and health and fitness that you're providing them now, I think can pay off greatly as they age and actually have some health issues that they can prevent.
Correct. But I really am passionate about doing it, because it's more from a discipline and helping them understand, that somebody believes in them. A lot of these kids don't have that role model sense of having somebody that can tell them straight in their eyes that they can do it, that they can make it in life.
That makes sense.
And
so I imagine
it's a little different.
Right.
There's a lot of positive sayings and quotes that we have, painted on the walls inside the gym, just so they can understand, because what you continuously feed is what you're going to believe. And so if they're in a negative environment, that's what they're eventually going to think they're going to become.
Yeah.
And that's not what I believe.
So I imagine it's somewhat affordable and
It's free.
Oh, okay.
We don't charge the kids anything.
So you find funding through
We
your own
find
efforts.
funding. So we do a lot of fundraising. We do a lot of reaching out to the community. We write out for grants. We just had MPW do a Gene Day for us to help us get some funding through the United Way. And we completely live off personal
That's
donations.
something to note. And I think for people watching then,
Yeah.
if sounds like you have room or will make room
Yeah.
for people that have children that would like to be involved.
Correct. So
Do you ever use the punching bags throughout your own frustrations with the last couple of years as a council member?
there has been times where it is a good
Comes in handy?
It comes
Just
in as
go
a good time to
punching
just
bag?
well, just working with the kids. I think just on the hand mitts, I think I end up getting a workout myself.
Just visualize a frustrating issue and let them kind of, okay.
Yeah.
Well, great. That's very commendable, and thanks for the background, a little bit about your Muscatine resident, lifelong. Your kids have gone to school here, and you give back to the community in some literal ways. I mean, not just figuratively, but with your boxing club efforts and throughout your contributions throughout your life. Okay, so let's kind of switch modes here and talk about some city council type things. You are a city council member at large, so,
Yes, so
you represent the entire
whole
town.
city. Yes.
Why did you decide to run originally? I asked this of the current candidates, but why did you run originally? Go back in your time machine. What was driving you?
So there was actually a meeting that I was requested to sit in to help the police force work with minority groups, which were the Liberian group and the Hispanic groups that were living in some of the apartment complexes that they had communications issues. And for the first couple of meetings I went, and it was the city administrator and the mayor at the time that were there, and I think another city staff. And when we went through that time, I sat through the first couple of meetings and I just heard a lot and listened a lot. And I think on the third meeting I said, well, that's not going to work. You can't do this, or you probably should, go down and talk to the people a little more, get to see what they're talking about. And I think in the meeting somebody said, well, why don't you run this whole thing? Why don't you run the program? And I thought, well, wait a minute. I was just giving some input. I was just asked to be a member here. And at the end of the meeting, somebody came up and said, hey, there's an at-large position coming open. Why don't you think about, running? And I really took that back and I started kind of reviewing a little more, because I really wasn't involved in any city politics at all. I understood a little bit, but I didn't have the knowledge of what it took and raising funds or trying to go get signs and, literally having, half my gym wear the shirts when we were walking in the parade, things like that, But we eventually we did, and my campaign was successful, and I was elected.
Yeah, and it sounds like you've probably learned a lot. What did you hope to accomplish? Was there something that you had in your mind that you wanted to accomplish?
So if you go back to what I do passionately with helping, I really think that our children are our future for the leaders of this community. And so I thought, to me, it was really thinking about how do I incorporate my mind, if you want to say my main issue or my main concern of thinking is, how do we continuously work with our school boards and community involvement programs, if it's opportunities that we can keep those kids active and help potentially reduce the crime and the future of having them be the leaders of tomorrow. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I just knew that was kind of my thought process of saying, well, if I'm going to have some sort of initiative of some sort of thinking, I want to help the kids in somehow, in some shape and form. And I didn't know that yet at the time. I just thought, well, I want to help the community. So
and that was, that makes sense.
That was my
that was
little,
your drive?
That was my initiative initially, yeah. It's different now. I think I've gotten a combination of that, but a little more.
Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm sure, your perspective has changed now that you've been involved in it. Do you regret, I want to get in specific questions later, but big picture, do you regret being a city council member, or is it something you've been enjoying and hope to do again?
So the first couple of months, I can honestly tell you that I questioned in my mind what this was all about, why I was getting, interviewed, or why was I getting through these investigations and questions and audits, and I didn't understand that. I really questioned in my mind, is this really what politics is all about? And during that time, it was difficult to be fair and say, oh yeah, this is what I want to go through for volunteering for, you know, less than $10 a meeting, you know. But now I look at it back because it's that struggle that I went through has really made me stronger. To really kind of stand up for what I think is right for our community and what is best for our citizens and our residents. And so I don't regret it. I'm glad I went through it. You know, it's kind of the long term, but I just couldn't see.
Yeah, the timing, now that you mentioned it, I remember thinking to myself, you just got elected and then boom, like you didn't even get a chance to really think about the children in the school district initiatives. It seemed like right off the bat something was going on. And I remember thinking, he probably has no idea, because you hadn't had enough experience to really.
Oh, I had gone to months of meetings prior to. And I got a chance to understand how because the one that was a big one for me was understanding how the Roberts rules worked, how that you know, structure needed to be, and you know, some of those things when they were running that, I didn't know that, you know, so I had to learn a lot of that initially, and the months prior to was really helpful because I was like, well, I know what topics they're working on. I understand what they're talking about now because I've been there. I understand. I talked to some of the council members prior to me running. I got a chance to get to know them. I understand just a little bit, basically, their information. And so it was helpful, but there's so much to learn.
I bet.
So much. I mean, you will be overwhelmed in the first year before you ever think that you're going to say, oh, I think I'm going to be productive. I mean, you're just like a computer. Just get all the data and get all the stuff put in before you can really say, okay, I think I can make an input that's going to make a productive change in whatever's operating or whatever they're doing. That's
good knowledge for any candidates that may be watching, or people that kind of thought about running in the midst of all of our kind of city drama. There's work involved, and you mentioned it kind of is a volunteer effort. I've always thought of it as a volunteer effort. You're reimbursed, but not in such a way that anybody's doing it for the money. This is some passionate people that care about their community run for council.
It's true. There's no funding to sit here and say. If you start thinking about how many hours were there during budget, how many hours were there for other committees you're on, how many hours you're there for pre-meetings, so if you're going to just do in-depths, how many that are not just what's already said, yeah, you're probably less than you know, 30 to 40 cents an hour. You know. Yeah,
I was trying to think, like, if I ran for office and Robert's Rule Order, I'd like to propose that we give ourselves a raise. It just wouldn't work, would it? I mean, how would that even happen? Because it comes off kind of odd, you know. It's $4,400 a year or something, you know. So it's just kind of a courtesy.
Correct. When I can tell you this, I made more when I was teaching at the college, because I taught at the college here for over 10 years.
It's sort of a similar volunteer thing.
And so that was really thinking, oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
But what I really love about it is the fact that you're making a difference. You're really impacting the community and representing the community in what you do. So it's not about the money. It's really about the impact that you're helping in the community, and that's what I enjoy about it.
And you know, I was thinking about that. You know, you as a person, not that you were doing it for selfish reasons, but I bet, and I'm hearing you say that it actually has made you a better person, and to be held accountable for your own behaviors and actions. You might have had some things that you wanted to correct about your goals and values. I mean, you can speak to that.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that being involved in the community has allowed me to say, okay, I think I've learned how they do these projects, how they do this project. It's helped me personally, and yes, I truly have had to do some self-reflection and thinking, okay, I think we should do this, or I think I need to be doing this a little bit better, and it's helped me improve my own personal work here at the community.
What are some of the things you're working on right now that you haven't maybe be able to, I was told that you've been able to kind of get some things going despite, but there's some positive things. What are some of the things you're working on?
So from the actual recent years, 2 years that I've been in here, when we first did the airport, they were pouring concrete every 65 seconds. They were bringing a dump truck to pour concrete. And they had this machine, like they would just pour the concrete, and there was people putting rebars in. And I got a chance to get up on this machine as they're pouring the concrete with no forms. And I have basically engineering background from a lot of the construction that I do. So seeing some of this stuff, I'd never saw it before. And that was really, really an amazing job that the staff had done. They were keeping track of the trucks that were coming in. They were doing all the work. And then the city ended up getting awards from the state at what level of workmanship that was done on this airport, which was done by a lot of federal funding that they'd applied from grants, so it wasn't from city funding. The Mulberry project was another one that I got a chance to go down there when they were pouring the concrete and seeing how they were putting the rock down prior to pouring the concrete and compaction. The Mississippi Drive project, that's a huge one that we just got approved, and I've gotten a chance to go down there at least probably about 10 times that I've been down there, to where the contractors know me really well. And that, again, that one was not done with any city funding. The housing demand study, the Port Authority study that was done, I've been involved in quite a bit of those, and at least to a point to where I understand really what's going on, or I get myself to go down there and really understand it, to see, if there's questions that are going to come up prior to the meeting, or if I want to know really what is the request for more funding, or trying to make sure that we're keeping ourselves on track of the project's progress, because that's really my passion. I want to make sure that we're continuing to meet the request. If the project says they're going to be started by, XYZ date, and they're going to end by this date, well, then somebody needs to make sure that that's what happens. And so
keep them up on it.
And so that's really where I feel that I add a lot of value to the council, because a lot of times the council members will look at some of the things when I may ask questions, and they're just like, well, we don't really know that. What do you mean doing a concrete test break, or what do you mean, what size rebar are we using, or how far are we doing this for a compaction test, or how much man sand are we putting around in this pipe for protection. And it's an enormous amount of things. But when we're doing these projects, just even like the CSO projects, those are projects that we're doing 40-year life. We're redoing the streets, we're redoing the underground, and we hope that will continue to be there for our children and their children. Yeah. And so it's a great amount of projects that if you look at over the just in the involvement from a city standpoint and company standpoint, which is really kind of another animal in itself, because a lot of industries, we want them to come here.
Right.
And in the last 3 years, we have done $1 billion of actual investments and capital, improvements in the city. And currently right now, we're at a $250 million.
I think I'm glad you're speaking to that, because I think if people really researched all that's going on in Muscatine right now, it's phenomenal.
It's a good time to be here, and people don't really grasp that when they want to just look at these small things and say, oh, this is wrong or this is wrong. I'm challenged by the fact that when even the Mississippi Drive project, we had it approved at $9.1 million, and I tabled it, and then went back and said, no, you penny bid this. You're going to come back in here and change order the work on this, and I don't agree with that. They came up, they lawyered up. I argued it. I don't think they even understood what my background was. Nobody from the other council said anything. I continued to go back and said no. They came back again, and meanwhile I did a little research, and I said, hey, can I throw this thing completely out and redo it? And the engineers from the city were like, well, I don't know. This is going to take a while. It'll take us a month behind. I'm like, yeah, but this is probably going to get us out of a potential lawsuit from both groups, because they're both wanting the job. The other one was $100,000, and I said, and they'll probably go back and sharpen their pencil. Well, they came back $600,000 lower.
Right.
We were already going to pay that.
Yeah.
And but people don't sit here and really kind of identify with that and say, oh wow, this is originally what was already approved. City staff had brought that to me and said, hey, can we approve that? And I said, I don't think so.
So in a matter of speaking, you saved taxpayers $600,000. In a matter of speaking, yeah, I mean,
but it's really something that when you start looking at that, that's what the great diversity of our council is, because you want to have that. There's times where I may sit here and review something on on a bond that's 25-year, and I'm like, well, what's the difference between that bond and this other bond? And council member Spread will say, oh, this is not going to, we don't want to do that. We're not going to get that good of a rate, or we're going to make sure we do this because we'll save more money doing this way. We don't want to be in this position because then we're not going to be at a better position if we want to get a loan future-wise. I mean, you have to be able to see further. And from that standpoint, I reached to him and I'm saying, okay, well then I'm going to look at what you're understanding, because I'm not going to sit here and say I have 25 years of banking.
There you go.
I have 25 years of engineering.
Yeah, so what I kind of noticed is if the council member and the mayor and the city administrator, if they all have kind of complementary skill sets and backgrounds, you have group cohesion.
Correct.
A team that can accomplish more than any one individual. If everybody's complementing and getting along and working productively to the city's best interest, you have a well-oiled machine.
Yes.
But I'm not noticing that that's currently the situation. So what are your thoughts on that, just in general? Because I hear you and you're touching a nerve as far as, I think that's exactly how council works, and it sounds like in a lot of ways it's working really well. But there's not across the board apparently.
So, correct. It's not what I would say that would be an ideal team. You know, I think the challenge I really kind of looked at was when the first couple of months, like I said, you know, being investigated for gender bias for me, you know, when I have multiple amount of kids and women and girls in my gym, and to have that accusation being brought upon, you know, the council members and me, it was difficult to kind of go through that, and having seen city staff be put through many different accusations, which, you know, never came to fruition to say, okay, this is true. Mm-hmm. This was, here's the smoking gun. No, it was a bunch of conspiracy theories. Oh, this is what they said, or hey, they posted this on social media, but oh, they must have deleted it, but nobody could find it. But we're just going to continue to go through all these steps and believe that this is what happened. You know, you tend to eventually hit the morale of the people. You know, the city staff, I mean, they're residents just like me. Mm-hmm. You know, and if you continuously just go around and make these baseless claims against things, then you don't have anything to back it up, and then you go around and saying, oh, hey, you're the bully. No, how? You're the one making these charges, and you're saying that we're bullying. How are you a bully if we're just trying to help the community? I mean, this is what was really difficult for me in the first couple of months, and so it's
sounds like you felt you were being bullied in some ways. I mean,
very much so.
When you
very
sue
much
somebody,
so.
it's kind of it's a bullying move.
It was really difficult for me when we got done going through one of the public works, and I had a conversation with the mayor, and I said, hey, you know, there's a lot of questions that are being brought up about, you know, your funding and you know how this is being perceived and how you made these requests. You know, maybe you should be looking at how you kind of communicate maybe with the other council members. I said, because I'm trying to just get to know them a little better, and it would help to be just a little more transparent, because, you know, she explained to me, you know, how this helped from her husband and how she got this funding, and she was just instant right away to tell me that. And I said, well, then just say that, you know, if you really want to be transparent. And then 3 days later, you know, the article comes out in the newspaper saying that, you know, the council members aren't transparent, and literally had transparency like 4 or 5 times. I'm so sick of it. I'm like, here I was just kind of just saying, I would think it would be better if people could see really what you're about and where you come from, you know, and so that's really where, from my perspective, I don't have anything to hide. So, you know, come at me with what you're going to. And when somebody all of a sudden gets defensive, and then they just start blaming and pointing fingers and say, no, it's not me, it's them, and them, and never have any self-reflection. You know, I've learned through the council, okay, maybe you're better at this, or hey, maybe you should listen a little more, or maybe you should just wait up and not say nothing because this is going to help you through this. I take that feedback. I have gotten feedback from other council members. I've gotten feedback through many city staff, and it helps me to become a better person. I mean, if you're not teachable, you're never going to get better.
Sure.
And that's something that I have learned through my career and through my city council. I mean, the fact that I'm on it has added so much more value to me, and it adds more value to the community, because now I'm a better contributor to the team.
Right. So what's if you're advocating for what's in the public's best interest, the community's best interest, sometimes it sounds like you're saying you have to think outside of your own personal agendas.
Correct.
And see the bigger good. And how can you accomplish your goals as a team? Because you guys have all been elected to work together, not separately and against each other, because you all want the same thing. As far as I can tell, everybody.
Well, I mean, we still have to have our own, perspectives and understand and maybe, represent our districts or the at large. I mean, we're not going to agree on everything. I mean, obviously, you can see many different times, not everything is going to come to an agreement on everyone's opinions.
What seems
and again, I can't speak for the other council. I'm saying that.
Let's make sure. Yeah, this is Santos speaking here. Yeah, I mean. What seemed to start everything, as far as from the public's perspective, is when there was a talk of changing the mayor's ability, not our current mayor, just the mayor's authority to elect people to the different chairs of the committees. Was that done as an act of, in a contemptuous manner? Was it an act of punishment, or was it a coincidence, or what? You know what I'm talking about? That was kind of like the first thing where people thought, oh, maybe the council is out to get the mayor because she was just trying to do what the people were asking her to do, which was make a more diverse group of chairs for these committees. Any thoughts on that?
So I can only speak for myself in those aspects of it. The first a couple candidates that she brought up, one of them was one that I really questioned. I had a discussion with her, and I said, listen, I'm not going to approve this because basically it has to come to the approval. And she contacted me over the phone, and then right before the meeting, I said, listen, I'm not gonna do this. This guy's got some issues. He's got some background issues. I don't even think he should even be elected or be in a position like this due to the background of what he had. And she tried to say, well, those charges have already been removed and this and that. And I said, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's still, this is what happened. And so that was one. There was a couple other that didn't even have any really history or any kind of experience in some of those positions. And they had positions that had a little bit of influence in saying, okay, does this, if somebody goes to get removed or potentially fired from a city staff job, this civil position is going to be able to allow them to come back in or be able to appeal this. And someone being, coming from being a priest, not having any potential, there's already an attorney and I think somebody that has some more legal background as an HR representative, had that understanding of what those types of positions are. They were continuing to come at these positions that it was really difficult for me to be able to sit here and say, does that really fit? And you're supposed to kind of communicate with us. There was no communication prior to this. This was just, oh, these are the positions. I've already decided this is who I'm going to have. This is the position that I think is going to be the best person for the MPW board that literally has an influence of $100 million per year. This is the best position. And you normally have a little bit of discussion with those board, people that are on those groups that kind of say, okay, we kind of really need somebody that has a little bit of background in accounting, or we really think we need somebody that has some background in maybe real estate if I'm going to be on the zoning board, or we want this position that may have some engineering background because we need somebody on this MPW board. And so you start looking at that diversity that just like we talked about before, and none of that was there, and none of that ever was there, and it was always kind of an excuse that would come back and say, well, this is what I think, and this is what I think. And so it was a difficult thing for me to believe.
So things got off to a bad start, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Do you feel like the word retaliation is relevant in any way, shape, or form with respect to what kind of transpired after that?
I can only speak for myself on that, and I don't believe it was any retaliation at all.
Sounds like you specifically, again, you were just getting into your thoughts were what's going to be best for the community, and I was elected to do a certain job, and so the challenges or the questions you had were coming from that perspective. It sounds like.
Correct.
So, yeah, okay. How have things been? I'm just going to go off the book here. What are your thoughts on so transparency? Yeah, it gets thrown out a lot, but there was a time when I couldn't, just as a public member, and I know you guys were probably advised not to speak, but it wasn't doing anybody any favors, just from my perspective, to not talk, because that, I think, is what fueled the fire. Is we knew that there were going to be answers, but they weren't forthcoming, and it allowed the other side of the story some momentum that you guys weren't able to address. That had to be frustrating.
That was very frustrating. It was very frustrating. And so now that the hearing and the administrative hearing is done, we can't speak. I can speak in a sense from my perspective, but you couldn't speak on the actual topics that were in the closed sessions. We could only and during the hearings, we were basically given direction from Judge Nara that you couldn't talk about any of these things. This is exactly what's going on. You're following the code, where the code says you are the judge, you are the jury. We never were able to meet him until the end. He was just giving us direction and said, we're not gonna be able to talk about nothing, and we're not gonna even meet him until the end. And for me, it was really frustrating, because you knew that you were going to be presented all this information, and you were able to review all of the charges, which, by the way, all the charges are still there. I mean, the only thing this appeal process for the tapes is due process. I mean, if you look at everything that's going on, the mayor's not denying that those charges weren't done, and nor has the judge been able to rule on that. So we're still in that process. It's just right now, it's just a due process of saying, okay, you were judge and jury, and that's not fair. Well, having said that, we were only following the code that was written back in, I think, 1960 something or 70 something. It was in the earlies, and that's the code that basically said, okay, if you are going to be removing this is the steps that you have to do. If you violate the code of ethics, if you violate this, if you do this, then that's what you have to do. And
so yeah, because that was one of my questions. Is it seemed like a big waste of money, is just putting it frankly.
Correct.
But your answer now is that wasn't a choice. It wasn't a rational decision the council made. It was following the code that other people have mentioned, that we should be following the code with respect to the mayor hierarchy. So you were just following the code.
Correct. And in the if you go through the actual hearings, it says right there, this is the code. This is the code that says this is your position. This is your duties that you're supposed to do. And she wasn't doing them. She was outside of her duties. And so then basically you said, okay, this is what you did. You violated this. You continuously made these false accusations against members. You had, we tried to get us arrested and get it to the point where you're going to be like, okay, at what point
you were what do you mean you were tried to get you arrested?
Well, she went to the Attorney General, and there was a charge where she says, well, are they doing this correctly, and could they be arrested for that? Yeah. And then during the hearings was, well, I didn't really say that. I kind of just meant this, but if they could be arrested, would they?
The county attorney, yeah.
Yeah, and so then, and that's where the attorney ended up, stating that. But it was really, as soon as somebody goes up on the stand and says, oh, well, no, I was just doing what the people told me. Well, which people? Never said any people. Who? Who gave you that information? Never could provide anything, And so it was really difficult from going through a hearing standpoint and saying, okay, well, you have all this information, but you don't have anything. People said this, but you can't provide anything. You have all these, Facebook pages, but you're not. There's nothing that says, okay, this is the smoking gun. This really happened. Right. Nothing.
So I was going to ask, what would you have said had you, what's the first thing that, you would have said to a reporter that said the comment, and you had, it sounds like you're kind of getting this off your chest right now.
Well, it was
the main thing, and I think it sounds like you're saying there is the main thing I want to tell you is that these accusations are.
Yeah, it was really to the point from when people have to understand is saying, the city has to get to a point in saying every allegation that was done requires the city to take some sort of an action. If it's the audit, if it's us being charged with the gender bias, if it's us being, questioned on what we're doing and the steps that we're doing, those require attorney fees. And those continuously had an enormous amount. I think it was like 16 in the first 3 months, I think, that she was in the office. You start thinking, okay, we're on track to probably incur, $150,000. We're on track to incur $300,000 by the end of the year. We're on track to incur, at the rate we're going, probably $500,000 by the end of the 2 years. Where do you start saying we need to stop this train before the brakes are gone? And for me, it was really saying this thing's a runaway train in my mind, thinking I'm not going to sit here and continue to do that, because then the people and the residents that elected me to sit here and say, hey, you're supposed to protect our money, you're supposed to protect our future, are going to say, why didn't you stop the train? And I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, I'm going to let it continue to roll down till it hits, Chicago, and then back to New York, and then they're going to say, well, no, now we're in a multi-million-dollar case that we never stopped it, and that's what I couldn't allow.
So what'd you do to stop this train?
Well, that's when we started the removal proceedings.
I mean, I was thinking that through. If somebody sues you, you get served papers, whatever, you have to hire an attorney and defend yourself. So it wasn't like an option, it wasn't, you know what I'm saying? I think that was... and even then, I mean, it was just kind of thinking, okay, you have to pay attention to their actions. Because when people sit here and say, oh, I have a great amount, I can speak awesome, and I can tell you that I really want to serve and protect the people, but your actions completely are a different way, then their actions speak louder than their words. And that's really what you need to be looking at when you start saying, okay, should this be the mayor for this community? When people mention that I do it for the people, I was just thinking, if I'm the mayor or a council member and somebody emails me a complaint or whatever, and then the people have said this, I find that it's called overgeneralizing, but I do that all the time. People are saying this and that about, it's not all negative stuff, but I realize technically only one person said it, but we do tend to use that phrase. The people want parking to be 2 hours, not 3 hours downtown. Really, 2 people mentioned it, and if you are a mayor or city council member, you probably feel a certain obligation to listen and think about how you feel and how the community, how do you bring that together? Like what the people want versus what you want. You kind of see where I'm going with that?
Well,
because you get emails, I'm sure, all the time about things, and you can't answer them all. But
so I'll give you a perfect example on the parking that we just had recently provided to us on the change from a 3 hour per block, or the 3 hour for the entire 2nd Street. I had basically said, okay, well, I need some more information. I want some data. Kind of help me understand where the residents are at, help me where the businesses are at, what is their request? Well, I didn't have all the information, even though the business owners wanted me to do 2 hours and change it. I said, no, I'm going to vote this no.
Okay.
And I need to have enough information. And so I actually went down to the downtown and ended up having a long conversation with the business owners and getting a chance to get to know more about what their real concerns are, and looking at a better option, and then say in between, then let's get some information from the residents, because the residents are the ones that are also utilizing that parking, and what other options are we going to do? Because you can't just say, well, I just want to just help the business, but not the actual people that live there, or else how they're going to park, or they're going to park a mile down the road, and we have to have a little bit of a balance on that. And so you have to not just go off one person that gives you the information, or you can't just say, okay, one social media comment has somebody saying this is really what I think we should change. You represent the whole people, so you can't just make a decision and just say that's why when a lot of times when people come back to me, kind of like on the fireworks, I said, I'm not just going to make a knee-jerk reaction. Give me a chance to listen. Give me a chance to hear. And I have had an enormous amount of people that have come back and said, hey, I like fireworks. And then I had an enormous amount of people that said, my house almost burnt down. This is way too loud. And when we had the first part of the fireworks, they came back with us wanting 6 weeks. I'm the one that said, hey, let's just do a week, because that's what I've, living here my whole life, I always hear the fireworks for about 3 or 4 days before the 4th of July, and it doesn't matter if there's a law that stops them, they're still going off. And so I said, well, why don't we just condense it for a week? Let's try to work on that and move forward. And so then there was a lot of challenges with that. And I think that when we move forward on this next step, we're going to need to continue to to hear everyone's view. You cannot just say, 2 people called me, sent me an email and say, we should ban these. 2 people called me and said that, we need to keep them. You really have to keep that balance. And it's not always going to be an easy decision either.
I think, if you're an empathetic type person and new to the job, maybe the tendency is to try to make everybody happy all the time. And maybe certain council members and mayors of our past and current have learned over time that you can't make everybody happy all the time. And there's certain battles to fight and other battles you might want to step back from in the interest of the common good.
Correct. I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, and even everything that we've gone through, I can tell you this right now personally. I mean, I know there's a lot of people that don't like me just because I have stood up for what I believe, but I'm okay with that. Right. I think if you have everybody that likes you and everybody has no issues with you, then you probably never stood up for anything.
That's a good point.
And so for me, when I got barraged with an enormous amount of different people making, oh, you should be ashamed of yourself for us doing these proceedings. If you think you can do a better job, then come get it. Because I care about my community.
That sounds like it. Have you heard of the Facebook page, Remove the City Council?
I've heard an enormous amount of different ones. I was Remove the City Council, Take Back Muscatine.
Now that's got to be, I know you have to have a tough skin to be a politician, but that's got to be a growing experience for you. That's kind of what you're talking about.
Correct.
But do you feel those websites represent the people, or maybe that's just a small minority? And are you finding some solace knowing that maybe the majority of citizens love the work you're doing? I don't know.
I think people, I think one of the difficult pieces is not having all the information, which we couldn't, and I still can't talk about the tapes, but again, like I said before, I know we don't have anything to hide, so we're not afraid of what
the closed sessions.
Yeah, the closed sessions. But I think the lack of not having information, people tend to fill the gaps in.
Yeah.
And so then they'll easily just say, well, this is probably this, and this is probably that, and that's not the case at all. I mean, you can really just see what our community has done, even though despite all of these challenges that we have had as a city council.
Yeah, there almost be an award for that. How much you can accomplish despite some distractions.
It has been a difficult thing to hear so many different things, to get so many phone calls when the letters went out and said that we were all bullies, and I was like, my name was on the back with my number. I never got so many phone calls.
Wow.
I got so many phone calls from people, and when I said, I'm doing the best that I think I can do, and I'm sorry that you feel this way, and I got these explanations. I got hang-ups right away. I got people telling me that they were going to vote against me, and it was definitely a difficult time for me because people only knew one portion of it, and only one person saying, hey, I'm being bullied. And they didn't know that we were the ones going through all of this. And yet trying to sit here and say, we have to follow code, we have to follow confidentialities, you only know one view of the situation, and you're not able to really understand the full view, but you're making a decision and a judgment right away. And that's not a way you really can do. I mean, you really need to have all the evidence to be able to provide everything before you make that.
It's interesting to remind yourself when you're getting those phone calls that for every 9 people that might be calling negatively, I mean, people don't go out of the way to call because it'd be annoying too. Hey, Santos, you're doing a great job. Just wanted to tell you that. And then, I mean, people seem more motivated when they want to complain than they do when they want to reinforce something positively. And that's something that I hope you can remind yourself, maybe you're able to, is that, you know what I mean?
It definitely has been outweighed one way recently, but I have gotten times where people come up to me and they'll shake my hand, or I'll get an email and they'll say something, hey, thank you for all the good work that you do. And so it's very, very, gratifying in that aspect of it, because you don't really get appreciated a lot for this, and you really do have to have thick skin for what you're doing. And especially in our current situation for the last couple of years, it has definitely been a time where you feel like I'm the punching bag, and yet you're supposed to still somehow, in the end of the day, say, did you produce the results that you're supposed to do as a city council member?
We need punching bags, as you know, from your you need a thick skin into an orange skin.
I was walking through the hotel the other day, and I saw their little workout area, and it's probably I don't know, about 100 square feet. It's pretty small. I didn't think it was. I said, well, he says, well, we're going to probably do something bigger over here. And I said, maybe you should get a punching bag.
Yeah. Have it out before they come up to the council chambers.
No, I was just kidding with you.
Well, yeah, the ratio I came up with for every 10 complaints, for every 1 compliment, that equals 10 complaints. So if you've got 100 complaints and 10 compliments, you're breaking even. But it sounds like right now your ratio is way off. But that 1 compliment, I think they're speaking for a lot of people. You know, when people go out of the way to say thank you, it's rare, but I'm glad that you're able to keep that in mind, because I was wondering if any council members would rerun, and it sounds like across the board, and even Mr. Bynum, I think, would have reran if it wasn't. You guys are committed to making Muscatine a better place, whether people like it or not.
Well, it's again, we were going through the due process. We were not doing anything that we felt was wrong, and in the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, you know, why did you do what you did? You did it because you thought you're representing the city in the best way you could, and their best interest. So when you think about this from them running again, you know, I feel like we went through like a war, and at the end of the day, I want my team still with me.
Do you think anybody should be fired or voted out of office?
Well, I think that's
I mean, that's kind of specific, but
that's I think just from the perspective of what we went through. If you violate your code, you know, you're going to be removed. It's basically what the code's there for. So if you know, I think there's a couple of different ones. If you get arrested for certain crimes, you do certain actions, you're found guilty, you're removed. It's just, I mean, that's and then so when we start thinking about what we went through, we went through that and said, yeah, you violated these code of ethics, you said this, you did this, these actions were taken, we're taking the steps to follow through that. So that was a removal of it. I wouldn't say it was fired in an aspect of that.
So you would have been not doing your job if you hadn't followed the code, is kind of what you're saying. You were following the code. If you wouldn't have followed the code, then that would have been more of an issue internally.
Correct. Well, then you would be sitting here questioning yourself, well, then why were you elected? Why did you swear to take an oath to protect and to serve the city?
I think I know the answer to this, but I just was wondering, who are you endorsing for mayor this year, Diana Broderson or Charlie Harper, and why? Like, you have thoughts about either candidate that might be helpful for voters, is what I'm trying to do, is educate voters.
So from my perspective, the candidate I won't be endorsing will not be the current mayor. I've already gone through, feel like I've been dragged through the mud, hung out, then dragged through the mud again multiple times. And it's already continuously cost the city this amount. I mean, right now, her going through the appeal, she can stop it whenever she wants and continue to sit here to do this. We're going through these steps because she wants to continue to go through it. So I'm not in a position to sit here and say, well, I think the next 2 years we're ready to go through this again. No, I'm not.
You don't think that there was a learning curve that maybe has been overcome?
So think about it. Have the actions changed at all? No. Okay. No. Again, you must really judge someone by their actions, not by their words, because they've continued to take these actions and saying, okay, this is what I'm doing. Yep, I'm going to serve the people, but I'm not doing that. And so then in Charlie's position, Charlie has been a lifelong member of the community and continued to want to help the community. I used to go there and get my bike fixed when I was a kid, when we lived South End. And I have always reached out to him, and him being able to be a person that wants to give back to the community, be an ambassador for the community, and truly look at wanting to help our community grow. And as far as that perspective, I don't think you could have a better representative in Charlie.
So do you think the mayor, not our current mayor, but the Muscatine mayor, regardless of who it is, do you think that mayor should have more power? Or you use the term ambassador, and that's kind of the way I understood it. Mm-hmm. An ambassador can have a lot of power. You're networking on a daily basis with all the free lunches you go to, all the handshaking, ribbon cutting. You have power as the mayor, in my opinion, to make a lot of great things happen. But
so you have influence. You have an ability to make an influence in either in businesses or into companies to maybe want to come invest into the community. But when you think about the city in a sense, when I first started understanding really how it worked, you have an enormous amount of different networks, almost 16 different departments that are running and operating under a certain amount of budget that they're operating under, that the city has approved, the city council. And you have to have them report through a hierarchy of a process to say, okay, this is the dues, these are the don'ts, this is what I want to have done by this month, this is the expectations that we need to have for this project coming up. Every department has enormous amount of responsibilities. To try to have that be thrown on top of a mayor that has never had any of that experience, nor really has a knowledge of, does the golf course need this? Does the city need these new type of pavement machines? Does the trash need this new type of equipment that we need to be purchasing? None of that stuff should be coming back to a mayor and saying, okay, I need to have that. The police department needs to have new equipment. Budgets need to be changed. I don't feel that that's at all what would help our community at all, having a strong mayor influence. There's so many potentials that you could completely throw a budget out. And from our perspective, which I'm very proud of, that we have not raised the taxes in our city for the last 6 years, I think this will be the 7th year, that we have been able to operate and stay and maintain that. That's important. That's important for me because I don't want to pay more taxes.
Sure.
I don't want to be sitting here saying, oh, hey, this is the council members that raised the taxes 6% because we had to pay for the new equipment that was purchased, and nobody really bothered to look at these things before they happen. And when you think about what we do as council members, you really have to be able to see further and understand where the city is going to be going at in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years. And that growth is important for us.
Yes. Well, I think we were shooting to be 30,000 by 2030, I heard, because we've been the same population since the war and World War II. And we're going to pull that off. There are so many great things going on, meeting with the community development director.
Yes.
So there's some positives, but it sounds like if the mayor, the reason not to have too many cooks in the kitchen, so to speak, is that it gives an opportunity for the efficiency of the government to be impaired. And the proof could be just by looking at our current situation. It's not running as efficiently as perhaps it could have given a different set of circumstances. So I think that's the answer that you're suggesting. Some mayors in different cities are set up that the mayor is actually more of the administrator.
Correct.
And we have a separate administrator position in our particular council, but there are variations. Some mayors do have different levels of authority. But
well, and the whole point is that people have to understand that a mayor position should not be a position of authority. It should be a position of servitude. You are not there to say, I'm the mayor and this is the way it's going to be. You are there to say, I'm the mayor that helps make our city grow, helps serve the community, helps serve the needs of the individuals of this community, just as the council members are.
Right.
I mean, I was elected by the people just like she was and just like all the other council members are. We represent the people. Yeah. Not a position of saying I'm the council member at large and whatever I say goes, or I'm the mayor and this is the way I say it's supposed to be. It doesn't go that way. You shouldn't have that way. And if you have that mentality, you shouldn't be in office.
So the council, as far as power goes, politics is another word for power. The council members have the power, if you will, the way I understand it. The mayor position done through the ambassador role, quite frankly, just sounds fun to me. I mean, it sounds like something I would aspire to do, because if you do it like that, you're the ambassador, free lunches. If somebody important comes to town, if the Chinese president comes to town, the mayor gets to hang out.
Yes.
It could be a very rewarding and fulfilling job.
It is a tremendous amount of
compared to the council members.
Yeah, there is a tremendous amount of different things that you get to be exposed to, you get opportunities to be involved in. There's so many businesses that are growing, and that you're there at the ribbon cuttings, you're there at some of the initial discussions of how this business is going to go, and there's so many different opportunities that I think that a mayor would be filled with enormous amount of things if they just did those things, and that's what
you guys are in the trenches. Like you guys are, like you said, a year just trying to learn all the different ins and outs of how the city works.
Yeah.
You're spending hours and hours and hours doing what you were elected to do, and fun isn't, it's rewarding, but...
Yeah. The budget book is about this thick, and it takes me at least 2 to 3 weeks to go through and to evaluate, look at, okay, how many work orders did they have in the maintenance department? does this really add up? Are we looking okay? Does this not add up over here? How much money are we going to spend on new equipment? How much are they budgeting? Okay, how old was this equipment prior to buying a new one? There's so much, and there's a lot of detail that goes into that.
Thankless job in some ways, but one that it sounds rewarding for you. Because the elections are coming up, I think I heard you say that you want your current crew, you didn't use that word, but your current board members to stay intact. So Oz Malcolm is running against Mike Raywalt. Raywalt. Just in general, everybody in the council, you're hoping kind of stays the course. Or what are your thoughts on the election? I just kind of want you to, as a council member, to give the public a little opportunity to hear your perspective on the upcoming elections.
So I mentioned before, I think this coming election will probably have at least 3 times more than what we have had previously elected for elections in the past. In the 4th Ward, we have Nadine, and I think there's Larry Crum.
Vance Crumley,
Vance Crumley,
Brian
I'm sorry,
Freitag, and Lance
Freitag.
Murray. Or
Yeah,
Wayne,
and I
Larry
think
Murray.
those open positions, the fact that Mr. Bynum is not going to be able to run again, which he loved the position. He really did. I mean, I don't even want to get into the details of how difficult it was for him to leave, but I think there's a great potential between those candidates and somebody, a good representative from the 4th Ward, and it being either Nadine or Vance or Mr. Freitag.
In that particular election, I almost wonder about this gender discrimination situation. If Nadine has got a really great shot of winning, because wouldn't that have been nice just to have a? I think not that I hate to think that you have to vote them in because they're a woman, or vote you in because you're Hispanic background, but is there something, I don't know, it's almost like the voters could sue for gender I don't know. I'm trying to be funny, but not really, but I feel like she has a great leg up in this particular election based on her gender.
I can tell you that just the amount of time that I've known Nadine, because I've known her for over 20 plus years, she is a phenomenal lady. I've seen her at many meetings. She asked me prior to running what advice I could give her, what things that she should be looking at. She was really motivated to want to be involved in the community. She knows a lot of the things. She's already reached out to the city administrator, to the city council, to the community development lead, and reaching out and saying, hey, what's going on? How does this work? How does that work? Very knowledgeable. I think she could jump right into the role and be a productive member. Again, for me, it took a long time, but I think she's just off to a great start.
Nice to know. That's very good education for. She was on the show. We're going to have Larry Murray as well. Everybody running for office. That's not. It's a big deal, as you know, to make that step. So I commend all the candidates for running.
And like you mentioned before, it is a thankless job. Many people don't understand that you're volunteering your time. You are not doing what you're doing because you have an authority of any sort. You really want to do. I hope that all the candidates understand that you're doing it to serve the people. Mm-hmm. You're not doing it to serve some special interest or doing it to serve some other entity that has no interest in our community. It has to be you wanting to do it because you really want to better our community. And when people come in and they say, I just want to make all kinds of changes, understand what's going on before you start making those requests, because it took me almost a year to go through all the different departments, to sit with a cop, to go with him for 4 hours, to go with the truckers that were going out on the trash, to sit there and say, okay, I went over by the waste treatment facility. Okay, I went over here to the Parks and Rec department. Okay, I went over here to the golf course. Okay, you can't. I mean, I also have a real job, and I have to report to those things, and then I also make sure that I'm there for the kids and their practices.
I mean, that makes sense to me. I feel. Not only is it not thankless, but in this particular time in our political history, it's almost like you're not only being not thanked, but you're being yelled at sometimes.
It is difficult, because to be
being harassed,
to be accused, to feel like you're in a hostile environment, to sit here and feel like you're bullied at times. I think I've almost gotten to the point where I'm like, oh, okay, I know not to listen to where I feel like I'm just going to do what I know is important in my role.
And it's a skill set.
Yeah, it takes time, but the other part of being a council member is truly the rewarding part of impacting the community. You know, yes, sometimes you're going to have people call you that they don't agree with, but that's fine. Like I said, you have to stand up for what you know is right and the best in the, and sometimes you're not going to have everybody on the same page, but if you have the majority, that's what you're there to do. But to see just to see the community grow, to go down and get a chance to walk through the riverfront and get a chance to look at the new trail that we just built, and you can see how many people are using it. It's fantastic, the new trail that runs all the way up out to the deep lakes, and getting a chance to go through and say, yeah, I was involved in this. I got a chance to look at these quotes and got a chance to say yes, that this is what we want, and then to see it, you know, 6 months later, and then take my kids going down there to ride the bikes. I'm like, that's what being part of the community is supposed to be about.
So it's very rewarding.
And that portion of it, that's what I'm getting at. So that's why I don't want to leave with the end of saying, okay, being a council member is just a thankless job. It's not, no. There's still so many other aspects of it.
If you're looking for a thank you, this isn't the place to be, maybe. But if you're looking to make the community a better place and to make direct impacts.
Correct. Okay. And that's really where I feel that is so gratifying for me, because I can reach back and look at it and say, I made a difference.
We're running out of time here, but is there anything we missed that you for sure wanted to mention? I think we went for it today. But I appreciate your candidness, because you covered a lot of the areas that we need to know about as we're getting ready to face an election coming up here.
I just want to encourage the public to understand that we do what we do because we really want to serve the community. Everyone that sat on the council that made the decisions that we went through were the best for the community. And you have to really pay attention to people's actions and not their words, and look at that as hopefully your determining factor, because that's not the case that what we went through. And so I want to hope that they can look at that, and as this upcoming election, they make the best choice for our community.
Well, great. Thanks for being on the show. It's been enlightening, and thanks for being transparent. That's your favorite word?
That's not my favorite word.
I'm just kidding. So next week, we will have Scott Natbig, who will be, he's running for re-election, so we're going to probably take a little more lighthearted look at things and give him an opportunity to let you learn about him. And I'd like to remind you, this is, producers are responsible for the content, not Muscatine Power and Water. They provide facilities, so this is a public access show. If you'd like to be a part of it, be a guest, you can give me an email, as you see down there below. But also, check out our new YouTube channel if you'd like to check out the archives or stream in live, or the rebroadcasts on Channel 9, which are at 12 p.m., 5 p.m., and 10 p.m. on Channel 9, Muscatine Access Channel. And thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
All right.